The evolution of dance. Dance has been a constant feature of American nightlife for the past 100 years. However, our dancing has evolved dramatically over the last century. Dancing was once a rare way to contact the opposite sex, and formalities were required to ensure that nothing scandalous occurred. However, the rise of jazz from the 1920s onwards made the entire process much less formal and resulted in forms of dance that primarily appealed to youth. For the first time, people of various generations performed various dances. The Charleston was one of many dances that were popular in the 1920s. This adaptable dance could be performed at various tempos and didn't require a partner. The 1930s saw the rise of dancing film stars such as Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire, who performed waltz, tap, and a variety of other dance styles. These glamorous depictions provided a much-needed diversion from the harsh reality of the Great Depression. Despite the average person's low income during the decade, many tried to imitate their favorite movie stars' sleek dance moves, even with the fanciful costumes and jewels were out of reach. Swing dance had taken over in a big way in the 1940s. This upbeat style of dance not only centered on youth and energy, but also paved the way for early rock and roll dancing in the 1950s. The dance began to swing back towards individual move that did not require a partner in the 1960s, prompting some to lament the state of youth culture. The disco era in the 1970s introduced even more unique dance moves. Some of Saturday Night Fever's most famous choreography made its way into real nightclubs across the country. The Reagan era popularized breakdancing, which arose concurrently with hip-hop and reflected inner-city attitudes towards dance and music. Song-based dances like the Hammer Dance and the Macarena, as well as hits like the Running Man and Cabbage Patch, were popular in the 1990s. Dances from the early 2000s, such as twerking, Soulja Boy, and Beyoncé's Single Lady music videos Bob Fosse, inspired dance routine, energized the increasing freestyle dance movement. Let's explore the evolution's history, types, and elements in today's video. A brief history of dance. Origins in antiquity. The earliest historical records demonstrating the origins of dance are cave paintings in India, dating back to around 8000 BCE. Around 3300 BCE, Egyptian tomb paintings depict dance as well. These early dances were possibly religious. By the time of ancient Greece, people were incorporating dance into celebrations of wine god Dionysus and ritual dances at the ancient Greek Olympic Games. Furthermore, early people danced for pleasure, seductions, and entertainment. India and China. Dance has a long history in Asia. While Hindu dancing in India has a rich performance history dating back millennia, dance was restricted in the late 1700s by British colonists who deemed dances immoral. India's independence from the United Kingdom revived its classic dance traditions. Chinese dance has been practiced for at least 3,000 years, with ceremonial and folk dances adapted for court performance. Traditional dances such as the dragon and lion dance are still performed at celebrations today. European social dances. In most part of the world, social dancing evolved from folk dances, many of which were simple and repetitive. Folk dances from the Middle Ages were transformed into formal ballroom dancing in Europe. Beginning in the Renaissance, these dances made their way into royal courts, where they became popular as dancing masters taught the upper classes the proper steps for court dances. Social dancing became more lively as women's clothing allowed more freedom of movement in the 19th century. Then, in the mid-19th century, the waltz swept the world as a major dance craze, and social dances began to focus on two-person dancing in the early 20th century. Ballet's influence. Much of the dance created by choreographers and composers and performed professionally today has its root in ballet, which dates back to the Renaissance. Ballet dance evolved into an art form in the 18th century, when ballet companies sprouted up worldwide, telling entire stories through the emotional movements of the ballet dancers. Dancers gained more expressive freedom as their shoes and costumes evolved, but some ballet dancers found classical ballet's rule restrictive. As a result, modern dancers and choreographers such as George Balanchine and Martha Graham began deconstructing ballet in the 20th century to create new forms of performance dance. 5 universal elements of dancing. Dancing in all its forms involves 5 key elements. First is the body. The primary instrument of dance is the body. Dancers can move their entire body or just certain parts of it. Professional dancers train their body to be extremely agile and strong. Second is action. What the dancer does while dancing, whether they stay rooted in one spot or move across the floor and through the air, is referred to as action. Third is space. Dancers move through space in various ways, varying level, directions, and paths as they go, regardless of the form of dance. They also move about other people participating in a given dance, often in specific ways. Fourth is time. Time is an important aspect of dance because it affects the rhythm of the movement. Dancers are frequently choreographed to the meter of the music. Fifth is energy. The final dance element, energy, describes how the dancers move through space and time. Dancers can use their bodies and dance technique to make smooth or abrupt movements, tight and restricted, or light and relaxed. The late 20th and early 21st centuries. Postmodernism. Following the early 20th century explosions of modern dance, the 1960s saw the rise of postmodernism emphasizes simplicity, the beauty of small details, the beauty of an untrained body, and unsophisticated movement. The famous No Manifesto by Yvonne Rainer, which rejected all costumes, stories, and outer trappings in favor of the raw and unpolished movement, was perhaps the pinnacle of this line of thought. However, it wasn't long before sets, decor, and shock value were reintroduced into contemporary choreographers' vocabulary. Contemporary dance versus ballet. By the 1980s, dance had come full circle, and many practitioners saw modern dance as a highly technical and political vehicle. The two art forms were now coexisting peacefully alongside classical ballet. With little of the rivalry and antipathy of previous eras, the brilliant collaborations of Twila Tharp and Ballet Dancer was eventually achieved in a cleverly designed comment on this ongoing rivalry. We are still in a highly competitive artistic environment, with choreographers competing to create the most shocking work. However, there are still glimpses of beauty to be had, as well as much incredible dancing. In an age where dance technique has advanced further in expertise, strength, and flexibility than ever before in history. Street dance or hip-hop dance. At the same time, street dance became more popular in popular culture. Robot, a dance form cultivated in Richmond, CA, was performed on televisions by the famous group Jackson 5. In some ways, this event and subsequent soul-trained performances by black dancers sparked a street culture revolution. B-boying in New York, locking in Los Angeles, popping in Fresno, CA, boogaloo in Oakland, CA, and robot in Richmond, CA had all creative explosions in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Each has its own sets of histories, practices, innovators, and foundations. Hip-hop dance began in 1967 when Clive Campbell, aka Cool DJ Herc, and the father of hip-hop, arrived in New York from Jamaica. He is credited with being the first DJ to use two turntables and identical copies of the same record to create his jams. Types of dance. People continue to enjoy seeing ballet and modern dance styles perform on stage, with contemporary dance companies pushing the boundaries of expression. Furthermore, people flock to New York City stages to watch theatrical dancing, including tap dancing, while elaborate choreography is a feature of popular Bollywood productions in India. Ordinary people engage in a greater variety of dance styles outside the stage. For example, ballroom dancing dates back to the Renaissance, and many ballroom-style dances are still popular today. Elegant dances like waltz and foxtrot add elegance to celebrations, while more lively ballroom dances like the Charleston, swing dancing, polka, quick-step, and various country western dances add energy. Latin dances such as salsa and tango, cha-cha, samba, and rumba requires complex rhythms and fluid motion. Many people continue to practice their homeland's customs through folk dancing, which is traditionally accompanied by music from their culture. In addition, popular dances have exploded into new styles, while jitterbugging in the 1950s and disco in the 1970s were inspired by either ballroom dance crazes. Rock and electronic music introduced new types of dance, often non-partnered, to parties and dance floors. Let us know your views in the comments below and stay tuned for more.